to our next panel session. And we got a fantastic topic, the future of banking, rise of artificial intelligence and machines. And before I call on the distinguished and extremely senior and powerful panel members, brief lines on what they are going to discuss. RPA and AI, outlining the next steps in the efficiency game for banks to drive business in India. AI in banking revolution, end user perspective. Deployment of AI for improved customer experience in banking industry, and many more. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I would like to call on stage the honorable panel members in the order of the sequence. Can we have Mr. Abiesh Jose, Head Customer Service Quality from ESAF Small Finance Bank, with a big round of applause. Abiesh, welcome to the panel once again. Joining Abiesh, we have Mr. Sourav Dutta, Executive Director and Head IT from IDBI Bank. A big round of applause for Souravji. Souravji, welcome to the panel. We are delighted to have you, sir. Joining the panel now, Mr. S. SARAVANAN, DGM and Head IT, Karur Vysya Bank Limited. Can we have a big round of applause for Mr. SARAVANAN? Welcome to the panel, sir. Joining next, we have Mr. Gangadhar, Kodandaram, Chief Revenue Officer, Skit. Can we have a big round of applause for Gangadharji? Welcome to the panel, Gangadharji. And now I would like to call on stage the Honorable Moderator, Mr. Sunilkumar, Chief Customer Officer, Federal Bank. A big round of applause for Sunilji. Sunilji, welcome to the panel. And we have a very, very senior panel here with the industry veterans. Sunilji, all over to you, Captain of the ship and Moderator of the panel, wishing the panel all the best.
Thank you, Synnex, for arranging this marvelous summit. Sorry, thank you very much, and thank you very much for joy and making me the moderator for this panel with this esteemed guest. So I know that we are standing between your lunch and the discussions are happening. So we will try to make it interesting so that you can munch while thinking or think while munching. As far as the digital change is concerned, in the recent past, two major changes from the regulatory side has happened. One is the Aadhaar innovation, or the revolution to that extent, I would say, where the identity of the Indian customers have been determined, and it has made it very easy. Second part is coming from the NPCI side. The lots of payment mechanism they have evolved, and that has given a lot of impetus and digitization in the banking industry and the fund transfer to that extent. As far as this topic is concerned, the future of banking, AI and machines, at least some of you may be thinking that is it AI and machines are going to replace humans? Is that the thinking process? May not be, because this is not a new question. Ever since the industrial revolution happened, or the computer happened, or robots came into picture, all those times these questions were there. But both the technology part, whether it is AI or the RPA or whatever mechanism is there, it has been side by side with the humans, and the human actions to that extent has been transformed to a great extent in using these facilities as an enabler. 6 to 7 years back, when we talk about these type of topics, one fundamental point came into that fintech disruption happening in the banking landscape. Now I don't think after 5 to 6 years nobody is talking about any disruption, because the fintechs have transformed themselves and becoming the partners of the banking, because the banks are mainly running the payment system and the clearing process. So rather than the disruption, it all coming as a partnering and providing solutions in various technological spaces to the bank. So that is where the transformation is happening. And one of the most important aspect which being discussed here will be with regard to how the AI and the digital journey to that extent, and the RPAs, machine learning and machines to that extent, while transforming the bank, is it bringing the efficiency? Is it bringing the desired result? I would just draw attention to one of the statements made by Sundar Pichai when he was summoned by the US House of Panel with regard to the their algorithm-related enquiries made by the parliament, and one of the allegation one of the member actually raised is that, are you politically sensitive and supporting certain political outfits? The reason he said is that as a member I was contesting for the election, but my father could always see the campaigns and the campaigns of the opponent rather than me. All the messages he is getting is that, so are you actually promoting? That was the question asked. So Pichai's answer was very interestingly, he said that as this algorithm or the artificial intelligence being run by the Google, to that extent cannot identify any of this thematic sentimental views of the customer. So in the enthusiasm to see what the opponent is saying, if the father of the contestant is looking into the campaign details or the campaign's materials of the opponent, naturally all the materials pumped to him will be that of his opponent rather than that of that of his son himself. So that was the answer. So this gives a very big space to the question, when we are looking into an artificial intelligence from a solution-oriented perspective, is it providing the right solutions in all the context? Or if not, what we need to do? I will keep it very short with this small this background discussion, and I will turn to my esteemed panel members for discussing on various questions, because the moderator's job is to elicit maximum from the members rather than speaking by himself. So I will turn my question to Saravanan on this context. The banking efficiency which are created by the RPAs, AI and all is moving into the next generation banking. So whether it is really creating that efficiency, how do you see, or how your institution is seeing that efficiency march happening in the banking space? Thank you.
Sure, sir. So every organization definitely have multiple departments or verticals or sections, and there would be some definitely a mundane kind of job or a repetitive kind of task will be in place. So bank is also not an exception from that list. So a lot of back offices are there where within the bank where repetitive kind of tasks are being handled day in and day out. So obviously all these days these kind of repetitive tasks are handled by the human, that is by the staff members. But still the result of handling a repetitive task again and again leads to a lower productivity, obviously, because they get tired and tiresome and doing the same thing again and again. So here comes the ground for introducing a technology that can automate the repetitive tasks, so that the human work is relieved from this particular stuff, and then they can concentrate into the much other areas, which leads to further productivity. And RPA is the solution for that. So definitely most of the banks would have gone into that, and even we too. There are, I mean, the point is that identifying the exact use case within the bank's department is the challenge in building an RPA, as well as the other allied areas of having AI and machine learning. So that makes sense. The identifying the right task for taking up the automation plays a major role. And we do, we started this RPA journey a couple of years ago. As on date, we have built nearly 90 bots especially for the back offices. And it was quite interesting. We started with one of the most critical activity, which was handled at the back office. So the example is that the bulk upload, especially the salary uploads from the corporates as well as from the MSMEs. So though we have given options to upload those salary details through the delivery channels, but still the customers want the bank to get the things done, because it is much easy to share the data and then rest will be taken care of by the bank. So we thought in a variety of ways, and we chose this as the appropriate use case. And the manual process was segregated into various activities. So RPA is nothing but building a bot for each and every activity and then combining the entire sequence. It may be a programmatical work, or it may be a click and drag kind of stuff also. That includes everything. So we did that as a use case. And see, when the activity was handled manually, so the task is that whenever the corporate sends the bulk upload file, we need to look on to the account numbers as well as the amount to be credited, and then prepare the file, bulk upload file, and then upload into the core banking solution. So here a lot of challenges are there. We need to identify when the file is coming and whether the account numbers given is correct or not. And salary, we do not know. Whatever number is there, we are just going to upload. And once the upload is done, then we need to recheck whether the credit has happened into the customer accounts. So this is the sequence which we need to do. So we split that into multiple activities. We wrote 6 bots for this particular task. So the very first bot will understand whether the file have come from the corporate. Yes, if it is so, then it is it gives signal to the second bot. And the second bot is to check the correctness of the account number. So each and every account number is being taken into the core banking and verified whether he is the right customer along with the name, whether it is matching or not. Then comes the preparation of the file and then uploading the file and finally verifying the correctness of the file. And all these things are there. And RPA is, as I quoted earlier, it is nothing but the handling the repetitive tasks. And this will still do better when we build some artificial intelligence into that. So here comes the artificial intelligence introduction, wherein the correctness of the account is being verified. And once the activity is done, then we used to intimate to the customer that the activity has been completed, as well as to the respective customers, corporate as well as to the customers also. So a lot of organizations are generating huge data, and appropriate insights has to be given to identify the right use case and convert it into an RPA so that the repetitive tasks are handled by the system rather than by the human. So as Mr. Sunil sir said, RPA and AI is not at all going to replace the humans. Obviously, it is an hand-on tool for the humans to do the things efficiently and with increased productivity. That's what I see from my side.
Thanks, Mr. Saravanan, for being very confident as far as the RPA process is concerned, and it is cutting short the deadwoods to a great extent and make the process efficiency very good. Now I turn to Mr. Sourav from IDBI Bank, who is a technology expert to that extent. Definitely we know that the efficiency has been brought in by this RPA as well as AI, like experiments and the attempts what banks and fintechs are making. But is that only the benefits, or are there any risks also running along with the systems? How do you see it from a banker's perspective?
Thank you. Just to give a perspective that AI is started way back in 1956, right? It's nothing new. So over the period of time, it has grown. And with the evolution of the computing power, right now that the mobile device that you handle has the more computing power than the all computers put together when the people went to the moon, right? So you see the amount of evolution that has happened over a period of time. And with that, the data also, the population has grown and the data has been there for some time, right? So AI works best on the data. So you have a large amount of data and things would be taken into perspective through the machine, the intelligence which has been brought into the machine. Now, having said that, it has got its own pros and cons, right? So on one side of this, the topic itself is rise of AI, right? So from one side of it, if you look at the AI, it gives the advantage of reducing the operation cost, the operational risk, as well as it gives better customer experience. Similarly, on the other side, if you look at it, it gives a huge advantage in terms of reducing the fraud risks and giving better regulatory compliance. Now, from the other side of it, if you look from the fintech perspective and all of that which is coming in, not to just talk briefly about the fintech, is that from a bank's perspective, fintechs were looked at quite skeptically to start with. And after some time, banks realized that fintechs are there to stay, and it will be good for a partnership where banks do not have much leverage, and they can gain on that. On the other side, if you see that the fintechs which have come in, and with the evolution of the data, the program source itself is so convenient now that any person can just download it from GitHub or somewhere and can develop their own apps very quickly. So those things are happening, and with that, the rise of fraudulent applications are also on the rise. So from a fintech perspective, RBI has given a guideline that any app which is not on the RBI side, please be beware of that. So all the awareness things, all the awareness exercises are going on. But even then, you see a lot of fraudulent activities happening, and people are falling into these traps. Basically because of social engineering, phishing. It's not because of technology primarily, but it is because of the lack of awareness and playing with the emotions of the person. Your KYC is getting expired, your mobile number is getting blocked, right? So people jump on those kind of things, and they do things which are not expected, even after so much of awareness being put into the social media and in the common space. Now, so other side of the AI is that if you look from the pure AI perspective and its implementation into the real world applications. Now, it has been great in terms of helping in making certain decisions. So the definition of AI was just basically that it would a system that would mimic the human cognitive systems, right? Sciences or systems. But those, that concept was later trashed by the AI researchers. And what is being said is that AI systems are basically doing things rationally, right? And and does not limit the area of the scope of intelligence per se. So that is a new definition for AI. From a implementation perspective, which I was coming to, is that the risks that Mr. Sunil was asking was that AI will tend to give you something known as the AI bias. So if you try to train a system, so there are various ways of training a particular system, right? So AI has got AI is at the top layer, then you have the machine learning, under that you have the deep learning. So there are three basic layers. AI is the overarching umbrella, which covers all of these. Now, from implementation perspective, what I was talking about is the AI bias, is that how you train the system. So depending upon the training of the system, there is an AI bias, which tends to be more human-like. For example, if you're trying to, this happens I'm talking about specifically the banking sector, banking industry, which I come from, and it basically is on the side that how you train the system, it gives you bias towards a particular way, and things can go wrong if it is continued for a long time. Similarly, there is something known as the explainability. So for example, if you have taken a decision based on certain data points that you have, and how you have come to that decision, you have to explain it. That becomes very difficult with AI or ML or DL systems, specifically in case of a regulator coming in heavily on you. This is not seen much in Indian scenario, but it is more prevalent in the areas where AI have been used extensively in kind of credit or loan decisioning systems, where how you do this, how do you arrive to a particular scenario as to how you have given this, you have taken a particular action. So, so there are plus and minuses for everything. AI is definitely used to improve productivity, to reduce a lot of operational risk, increase compliances, but it is not replacing the human. It is just increasing the productivity of a human. At the same time, AI systems and techniques would help definitely in going forward in terms of the productivity and implementation of newer systems. Also, one side I'm talking about the business side of it, the other side is operations, including the networks, right? So you have AI systems also in networks which help you detect the breaches, the faults, the attacks. All of that is also being used. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sourav. So both these gentlemen gave us a very balanced view, the advantages as well as the risk which we are seeing it. Now I will turn to Mr. Gangadhar. The question is, precisely that he is as a fintech partner to the banker, he is providing the solutions in the automation space. So what is your experience? We were started with the discussion point that fintech disruptions to the industry or the banking landscape coming, and from there moving to the partnering. So when you are partnering, when you are partnering with the banks, what is your experience, number one? And number two, how you are always able to, the fintechs are able to provide solutions and one step ahead of the banks? Because banks were all dealing with these problems and they have big IT departments, mechanism, everything is there. But each time fintech is coming and telling us you have a new opportunity, you can manage the risk like this, or you have a business opportunity like that. How you are actually able to stay one step ahead in the game?
Thanks, Sunil. I'll just try to take a stab at it. There are more veterans here on the stage, but I'll still, as a young startup CRO, I'll just try to address what are we doing and how. Probably I wouldn't call it staying one step ahead. I would always say walking that step with the customer to figure out how do we fix that problem, what we're trying to fix. See, I've seen each one of us in this room, we have seen the banks from the coin days where we used to have a steel coin to withdraw money in banks and waiting 30 minutes anxiously when they actually call your number and the teller is going to ask you token. And teller is actually say 13, you will go give 13, he will say how much. Because that is the way he is validating using human intelligence to say whether you picked up the coin from someone who just left it there trying to encash that, or you are the real person who signed behind the check to withdraw that 500 rupees. I think from that days, today we have evolved to a stage where there are banks which are able to take decision in 60 seconds to issue 100,000 rupees loan to a customer using a lot of systems in the back end which are helping them to reach this stage. End of the day, objective of a fintech company or a tech company or a banker is to deliver a great customer experience and with very high operational excellence. Which means without burning a lot of money, can I service that customer? And where customer goes back saying that, hey, I am with the right banker. In the past 20, 30 years back, the choice for the customers were very limited. If you are a customer with an X bank, you are a customer with that X bank because your dad had an account, your grandfather had an account, and you continue to be that. Today's generations are spoiled for choices. Now, even I remember 20 years back, I had to go to bank to open an account. Whereas today, the bank comes to you to open an account. It is completely, the story is transformed to an extent where now sitting here within 10 clicks, now I have a bank account, I step out saying that I have a bank account. So I think a lot of these processes today have evolved because of the changing needs of the customer and not because the businesses want to change. And I would say there is a large role of technology. I wouldn't call AI. AI is just very, very generic. Everything is AI today. Those who don't do actually ML also call themselves an AI company. It's over-abused word, I would call it. And in a way, what we are doing is that the company I work for, we automate customer experiences at the contact center using AI again, though it's overused word because we do really use AI. So what we do is that today banks want to provide a fantastic customer experience, no doubt about it. And there are banks today, you can get a loan sanctioned in 60 seconds, in 2 minutes, at least in India. There are 2 minutes, 5 minutes. But how many customers can reach out to the same bank in 2 minutes and confidently can say, hey, I spoke to a contact center agent? Forget banks, any industry. Impossible proposition because there is a certain budget to run customer service in every bank, and there is a certain customer expectation. Customer expects a customer with 100 rupee bank balance or 100 crore bank balance expects I call, you pick because my money is with you. You better deliver me the service. So using automation, we are helping a lot of these banks to deliver a greater performance using AI-driven voice bots. That's what we do. And we are seeing that today human agents are absolutely required. I mean, there is no second thought that human agents will ever be replaced. But every contact center is a different problem altogether. We can talk for hours. Hiring, training, delivering a standard service to every customer who calls is impossible for any customer, any bank. what is the best way to see that human intelligence is used in those calls where it is required and where human involvement is absolutely not required, where customer is okay to just get that service faster than waiting for 8 minutes to speak to a human agent. Those kind of processes using RPA, using AI, whatever technologies we use today, you know, as long as we automate those things, it's value for the business, value for the customer, is my take. And human agents are here to stay, like how in every industry, like doctors are here to stay, though the technology is overtaking very fast. Likewise, in some other industry, electricians are going to be there. You might have every smart device, but you can't replace a human touch for sure. But wherever the human agent is not adding value, you can use the human for a better reason to get a better ROI on that investment for the organization is our belief.
Thanks, Gangadhar. Definitely, it is interesting, and you are ready to keep a watch on the purse and it's the amount inside before making any solutions. That is heartening for the bankers in any way. Now I will turn to Abiesh for checking how the end-use customer is ultimately getting benefits. We have a lot of stories heard that 2-minute account opening, 5 minutes or 10 minutes lending experience, and everything is happening. So how the end-use customer from your perspective is getting benefited with all this AI and RPA mechanism? Could you please elaborate on it?
Thank you, sir, for the question. In fact, I would love to answer this being taking care of the customer service quality department of the bank. After all, nobody sitting here would say that anything we do, if is not benefiting the end customer, it will not stay valid at all. So maybe a couple of points. Quickly, I will say the AI has helped things to become faster. As the panelists have already explained, I will not get into that. You get accounts opened within seconds. You get loans sanctioned and dispersed within seconds. So things have become faster. Not only faster, things have become more predictable for the customers. For example, somebody has applied a loan, and earlier what used to happen is like after weeks and months, somebody will come and say, sorry, you are not eligible. And the customer will feel discouraged. And he would come and say, had you not told me this earlier, I would have gone to some other bank. I mean, so immediately, maybe within a few minutes itself, after checking through the system, they can say, are you eligible or not? Should you continue or not? Things have become standardized. Like, in fact, things have become person independent. Earlier, how it was, the kind of service representative or the branch manager who used to help, if he's getting transferred, the customers are in trouble. But now that is not the way. Maybe the CRM with artificial intelligence and other systems have helped to bring in a kind of standardization and system dependent rather than person dependent. It's person independent. Whether the manager or the relationship manager moves out, it doesn't matter. You can continue with the bank if the systems are taking care of you well. More than that, it has become 24/7. You don't need to wait for the banking hours for the customers to come and do the transaction. Anytime, midnight, you can do that. Even you apply for a loan, even if you apply for an account, I mean, you can do even in the midnight. And again, coming back to the documentation part, KYC. What is KYC? People say know your customer. I would rather say kill your customer with documentation. You ask n number of documentation, it's a hell for them. Trying to take things and this is not clear, that is not clear. Now, all these things are gone. As somebody have already told with the coming of Aadhaar and biometrics, you don't need to run behind all these documents to be presented, taking copy. I mean, things have become so simple and faster, and also it has helped in a kind of self-service. I mean, most of the things, customers don't need to depend upon the branch personnel to do it for them. Rather, they themselves can do. You can get into the internet banking application or the mobile banking application. You can apply for a checkbook. You can apply for a debit card. You can do a transfer from one branch to another. I mean, n number of things. Not only that, it has become more of security to the customers. How do it? Maybe I would say one example, like based on the suspected transactions, banks are taking decisions, sending messages, even a suspected transaction occurs, the system captures and immediately blocks the card, or without even the customer coming and informing the customer, sir, we suspect a kind of transactions in your account and see that we suspect something fraud, can you please confirm? If that is not confirmed, they immediately block the card or the account. So the customers are benefited like anything. And I would rather say AI will continue to benefit the customer. That is why customers have received it wholeheartedly, and it will continue to be so.
Thank you, Abiesh, for that customer experience perspective. Yeah, definitely customer experience is definitely enhanced, but whether is it reached at the stage of customer ecstasy is what the going days or the coming years needs to prove to that extent. So now I will just turn to Sourav, a connected question. So we have always banks were having this data, and what we have started doing now is this analytics and the AI related reviews and machine learnings and all these techniques we are using. Is it making the banker's decision really error-free?
Yeah, so analytics is another word which has been overly abused, right? So I would call it data insights. From a banker's perspective, we have been seeing this data with us from a user perspective, from a customer perspective for a very long time. But we don't have bank, if you look at the banks, the kind of marketing that they do is basically on a very select premise, right? And from the other data that is available in the market from the various stores a customer would visit, use the particular bank's cards, use other transactions. So you have a lot of other sources of data. Now those sources of data, if they are corroborated with the bank's data, then it's a huge amount of marketing information or marketing opportunity that one would have. Banks have data which is very specific in nature. You can have a particular value, imputed value, which is more or less very accurate than the data which is available from other models, the propensity models, other models that is developed by the supermarkets or other places of interest, right? So banks, the data from a marketing perspective have been used only for select areas only, and banks have been quite successful in those particular avenues. Going forward, I think bank would be leveraging this data along with the data of the fintechs for if they want to run a specific select campaigns, and to enrich their own data in terms of getting some other values, imputed values into the system, which would make the banking. So we need to see from a traditional banking perspective, banks have been very closeted, right? So they have been closeted in their approach and in their way, and they have been quite successful doing so, because this is a very highly regulated environment, and in that environment it's difficult to break those ring fences, right? So from that perspective, banks have been quite successful, and I think they will be very successful in that area. But only thing is that they need to expand their footprint, which they are doing. They have realized it, and they have partnered with the various fintechs. So that is a very positive approach instead of seeing as a challenger. So the fintechs have been is now accepted as a partner. So that is a big change in the mindset. And with the fintechs being very nimble, so they will be able to gather all this information that would help in furthering the bank's goals and visions.
Thanks, Sourav. And I am fond of the clock ticking in front of me. So let us just quickly see some 2 minutes, 3 minutes answer to that extent that when we talk about this, how the AI is going to change the banking technology, is it an enabler, transformer, or a destructor to the current banking technology? Gangadhar, sorry.
I would call it certainly as an enabler, because everything what bank is doing is considering how do they improve their business outcomes, customer experience, profitability. I think again AI is very diverse, starting from application processing to the going back to the same customer and selling more and more solutions, cross-sell, upsell, and ensure that you collect the money on time, and you have lesser and lesser NPS. I think across the platform, end to end, there are multiple interventions which AI can bring in to add a lot of value to customers. It is certainly, we believe it's an enabler. And that's how everything what we build, we also look at how can we enable banks to do better, because they know what is the outcome expected out of it.
Yeah.
That's what we'll.
Yeah, thank you. Quickly moving on to Mr. Saravanan, whether the AI is helping for improved CX in the banking industry?
Absolutely, yes, sir. And as I said, no, organizations are generating huge chunk of data on the customer front. And it is the duty of the bank to understand, to dwell upon into the data and identify the data available and to give a customized approach to the customer. So this is one of the more committed and maintainable area in the bank, that is the customer experience or the customer service or the satisfaction. And this requires a lot of commitment from the bank side also, as well as from the employees also. And in order to serve better, obviously the data has to be dwelled upon, and customized approach has to be given to the staff members who is sitting in the counters to give a customized approach or selling to the customers. And since it is a digital world, the footprints of the customer is now more into the delivery channels. So banks used to collect the data with the way the customer comes into the bank, either through the mobile banking or through the internet banking or through the call center. So everything need to be collated, and appropriate artificial intelligence need to be built in, and many of the banks have done that to understand the exact requirement and to serve better, sir. So obviously it is yes, sir.
Yeah, quick question, Mr. Abiesh. Do you predict a change in the workforce? Because this robo-advisors, talking machines, and all those experiments are happening in the banking, and many banks have also put in place. So do you see there will be a change in the workforce itself in the banking in the near future?
I would say yes, but no. The reason being, definitely the front-facing, customer-facing phases might change from human beings to system to some extent, but definitely workforce is required. The reason is human beings are human beings. We are emotional beings. In a ESAF bank, we used to say we offer customers high tech and high touch. We need both. Technology alone cannot take care of it. Another point is, like, whatever technology we are building in, we need to understand, though the technology companies are building that, they need people who really understand how to implement it and how to build in, which requires, again, the workforce. So I would rather put it in this way: the workforce, they should be ready to reskill, they should be ready to adapt to change in such a way, like whatever they are currently doing, it may not be exactly the way they will be doing, but rather they will be complementing the systems, and a hybrid model wherein the systems and the workforce should work together to give a great experience to the customers.
Thanks, Abiesh. Before just concluding this, a last question, a slightly naughty question to all the panelists. Anyone is interested, please just respond very quickly in 1 minute or so. Basically, what I am asking is, Google in the present context predict everything, suggests everything, informs everything, and it knows that what we want or what we ought to have asked for it. So that is the scenario is coming, and we have seen the news reports that Alexa has proved a murder in a court of law. So with all these changes happening in the information space and data analytics thing, is it possible the banker's decision can be, even before you lend the money or even before a fraudster is opening an account, can we identify from it that whether he is a good customer or a bad customer? Is it possible? Anyone, please.
Yeah, it's very much possible, and going forward, we look that this trend would keep on happening. So from issuing loans or investments to particular customer or a group of customers, you can have the decision before you. And of course, like I mentioned before, you have the AI bias, and then you have the whole 9 yards of explaining it, how you achieve that, how you reach that decision. So that will be there, but the human factor will always be there, and AI will definitely be in the forefront going forward.
Even I agree to that point. To some extent, it's already happening. We are predicting fraudsters, blacklisted customers. It's already happening to some extent, and we will continue to improvise upon that.
Thank you very much.
I would just say, if there is something confidential you are speaking, always turn off your Alexas and you don't know who is listening to your conversation.
Thank you very much for that debate and enlightening discussion on this point. Thanks to all the panelists, and the floor is open to you.
Thank you, Sunilji, and thank you so much. Can we have a big round of applause for this fantastic panel? Mr. Abiesh Jose from ESAF Small Finance, Mr. Sourav Dutta from IDBI Bank, Mr. S. Saravanan from Karur Vysya Bank, Mr. Gangadharan from Skit.ai, and Mr. Sunilkumar from Federal for moderating the panel. I would now like to call on stage Mr. Ishwar Subramaniam, Banking Solutions Director from Oracle, our presenting partner, to kindly do the honors of felicitating this wonderful panel of champions. Thank you so much. Can we have a group photograph with Ishwar joining the panel? Ishwar, kindly, if you could join the panel. Ladies and gentlemen, what a fantastic panel. A big round of applause once again. Mr. Abiesh Jose from ESAF Small Finance Bank, Mr. Sourav Dutta from IDBI, S. Saravanan from Karur Vysya Bank Limited, Mr. Gangadharan Kondaraman from Skit.ai, and Mr. Sunilkumar, the moderator from Federal Bank. That was the future of banking, rise of AI and machines. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for that valuable panel session, and thank you so much, Ishwar, for doing the honors. Ladies